going on, everybody? It's been a while since I've uploaded anything. This is Mike here in my 1996 Corvette Grand Sport, and today is a fun day. I'm going to be doing my first ever dyno test on this year 96 Grand Sport. So I bought this car almost exactly 2 years ago, and it's still completely stock. And the reason for that mostly is because these cars, I've noticed, tend to sell for a lot less money when they've been modified. So I've seen some bring a trailer results with people putting exhausts and cams in cars like these, and they'll go for 5, 8. I saw one that went for maybe $10,000 less than you'd expect for a similarly equipped, similarly mild Grand Sport Corvette. So that's always been in the back of my mind. But recently I kind of had an epiphany that this is my car, I want to have some fun with it, I want to do what I want. So I just went and ordered a whole bunch of performance parts. I'll get into that in future videos, but figured it would be fun to do my first ever dyno run, do it before and after, and see what these parts do for this car. So before we go, let's talk a bit about my expectations. This LT4 motor that they put in the manual transmission 96 cars, it's rated at 330 horsepower, 340 foot-pounds of torque. So I think the test is being done at around 6,200 feet of altitude. So based on my math, it's about an 18.6% horsepower loss that you'd expect at that altitude. So 330 horsepower. This engine should be producing at least 270 horsepower at the altitude that we're running this dyno run at. Now, as far as the test, of course, it's on a chassis dyno. People talk about drivetrain losses. You know, there's a lot of debates and bullshit about that. And here comes the garbage truck, so we'll go ahead and wait. So of course, engine power and rear wheel horsepower, there's a lot of controversy on what drivetrain losses should be, if it's a percentage, if it's a fixed number, if it's some combination of the two, which is probably the right answer. Doesn't really matter. That's not really what I'm worried about. I'm kind of looking for before and after gains. But if I'm going to be honest with myself, you know, I'm kind of interested. So assuming about a 15% drivetrain loss at this altitude, 270 at the flywheel, I'd be hoping to see at least 230 horsepower at the wheels. Now, I don't know exactly what dyno the shop is running. We'll find out here shortly, but 230 plus, I'd be happy with. Now, that being said, this LT4 motor, it's a very interesting motor. There's a link in the description that CNS Corvettes did explaining what the LT4 is, but I got kind of a laundry list of what GM did to this motor to make it an LT1 into an LT4, and it's pretty extensive. So it's a higher compression motor. It's running 10.8 instead of 10.4. It's got a higher flowing fuel pump from 24 pounds an hour to 28 pounds an hour in this car. It's got improved intake manifold. It's got improved heads. It's got a rolled crank. It's got roller rockers with larger valves with more duration, lift, and overlap. It's got upgraded valve springs. It's got a roller aluminum timing chain versus the standard cast iron chain. Upgraded valve springs, I think I said, and a dual mass damper. So that's quite a bit. That's some hot rodding right there, which is what GM was doing, using kind of off-the-shelf parts, cheap parts to make this special motor. And all of that was supposed to only account for a 30 horsepower bump over the 300 horsepower LT1. And a lot of people said, is that really true? Or was GM, knowing that the LS1 was coming out in the next year's Corvette, maybe underrating this motor so it didn't look like the LS1 was actually a worse motor than they offered in the previous year's Corvettes? So to back up this controversy, there was a guy, Stan Edelman, I guess he posted this in some forum. He worked for a place called Auto Performance Test Lab in Georgia. And they actually, from what I understand, another garbage truck. From what I understand, they actually took 125 LT4 motors out of cars and engine dynoed them to see what they were actually producing. And those results were kind of interesting. I'll link in the description to the page I got this information from, but they found that only 25% of LT4s they tested came in under 345 horsepower, which was the rating of the next year's LS1. So 75% of LT4 motors actually outperformed the new LS1. 15% of these motors came in between 360 and 375 brake horsepower. 10% of them came in between 375 and 385, and then some smaller fraction of them were pushing even close to 400 horsepower. So that's pretty cool. So again, there's a lot of variables here with drivetrain losses and altitude and all of that, but I'll do my best to maybe back the math out and see if maybe I have one of these accidentally hopped up high horsepower LT4s in this here car. So with that being said, let's get out of here and go jump on the dyno. Of course it's raining. Shouldn't matter though. I'm pretty sure the dyno's indoors. All right, we're here. Shogun Speed Shop. Dyno tune. Let's get it. There we go, 117. What? No way. All right, run number 2. Alright, third run. Have to let it cool down a little bit and see if that helps, but first 2 runs were super consistent. Damn. You may have noticed on the first couple of runs, in fact all 3 runs, a lot of smoke coming out of the tailpipes. So I mentioned that after the first few runs, and Sean said, hey, let me hook a wideband up to it, see what's going on. So in the second run and the third run, there was a wideband on the car, You probably saw it in the third run, kind of got into there and zoomed in on it. And you saw the car was actually running pretty rich. It was showing kind of in the high 11s for AFR. So yeah, he said, well, it's not a bad thing. The car is probably factory tuned to do that, or maybe it's not adjusting for altitude as it should be, and so it's running richer at wide open throttle. Says you could probably find someone to tune that and tinker with it and get that closer to 13 or 14 or what have you, and maybe gain another 20, 30 horsepower by running it out a little bit leaner than it was running. But you know, it's probably a safety thing. There's no way the car is going to overheat and melt something if it's running at 12 AFR at wide open throttle. I'm happy with it. The car is producing plenty of power, but I thought that I'd go ahead and mention that because I'm sure you might have noticed in the video. So with that, let's jump in the car and talk about some conclusions. All right, so we're back home in the garage. It's the next day. I've had a little time to reflect and think about what did we learn during this dyno session. Of course, the number one thing we learned is that adjusted for environmental correction factor on this particular dyno, on this particular day, we were reading pretty much dead on accurate 316 to 317 horsepower to the wheels. So again, what does that mean? Well, what it means is after I make some changes to the vehicle and go back and run on the exact same dyno, I can see a good before and after of how any changes I made to the vehicle changed the rear wheel horsepower. That's all we know for certain. Now, of course, again, kind of a gearhead, kind of a nerd, and I do want to put my finger in the wind a little bit and try to say, well, what does it all mean, Basil? Well, unadjusted, I was making about 250 to the wheels here at 6,200 feet. It's pretty good. Again, my target was 230, but again, what does it all mean on this particular dyno, blah, blah, blah. So I'm gonna kind of assume that this dyno is accurate and it's definitely repeatable. So if we, again, assume about a 15% loss on the drivetrain, that's like 372 the wheels, if my math serves me right. So pretty good. Now again, what does it mean? I don't know. Again, this particular dyno, this particular day, there's nothing you really know until you yank the engine out of the car and literally put it on an engine dyno. But all that being said, I'm happy. I'm excited for the modifications I'll be doing to this car to see how they can improve power, and we'll go from there. Now, as far as what modifications I will be doing to the car, I'm not going crazy, I'm not pro-charging it, nothing like that. But I do have a muffler eliminator kit that is sitting right behind the camera that just showed up in the mail today. Happy me. And then I'm pretty sure this car still has the factory plugs, wires, and the fuel injectors have probably never been serviced. So Sean at the shop had a fuel injector cleaner. So probably next month, once I'm back from some business travel and some vacation, have them clean out the injectors for me, and then I'm going to put new plugs and wires in the car, install the muffler eliminators, and I don't know, I'd be happy to see somewhere to 5 to 15 horsepower bump. I know it's going to sound a hell of a lot better, and I'm going to have a lot more fun driving this car. So with that being said, maybe the hottest mod that's maybe on the table is an LT4 hot cam. It was a GM performance part. Some of the dyno tests on the Grand Sport registry page have shown some pretty significant gains from this hot cam. It has good reviews. It's about a $500 part. I have no idea what the labor on that looks like. Not sure if I feel qualified enough to be ripping my engine apart and putting a new cam in it. So I've got an inquiry out to the mechanic that I've taken this car to before for major work to say, hey, what would it cost for me to put a hot cam in this thing? And if it's within a range of reason that I'm comfortable spending, and maybe I'll do that too. So that being said, I'll finish the video out with a little tour of some parts that showed up in the mail today, maybe a little bit of preview of what's to come. And with that, appreciate you watching. Drop a comment, like, subscribe, anything like that. There'll be more Corvette content coming soon as I document the process of installing these parts and future dyno runs and all that jazz. Take care, appreciate you, till next time.